Are you ready? Yes, we are this week. Welcome along to the Weather Studio Live. My name's Alex Deakin.
And my name's Aidan McGibbon.
And yes, you are watching the Weather Studio live from Met Office HQ in Devon. And we're both looking very floral today, aren't we? We've both got our floral shirts on.
Spring is in the air.
Spring is definitely in the air. What a week of weather we have had.
Spectacular.
It has been spectacular, if you like. And a little less so down here this morning on our
One
cycle
notable
into work.
exception,
It was
the last 24 hours
damp.
in the southwest. But apart from that, it has been spectacular and it will continue to be spectacular. I'm going to continue to show entirely blank weather charts for the next
you're not.
half an hour. No, there are some things to talk about.
There's always something to talk about. We'd love your questions. We've already had some in. Keep them coming in. Even if you're not watching this live, keep the questions coming because we always go through them. We always try and answer them as well. If you could hit that thumbs up button, if you could hit the subscribe button, if you haven't subscribed already, that would give us a boost as well. That would be fantastic. And let people know that we do this live every week. We're here for you guys. Whole point of the Met Office is to help people stay safe and thrive. Enjoy the weather when it's like this, but also be aware when the weather is severe. So spread the word. You'd be doing everyone a favour if you could spread the love. Let everyone know about our YouTube channel, but particularly these lives. We want to get the numbers up if we can. So yeah, that would be much appreciated.
You don't have to watch it live.
No.
It's not compulsory if you've got other things to do at this time on a Friday. What is compulsory is that if you don't catch it live, you watch it later. That is compulsory. And you can then ask your questions in the comments, so you still get an opportunity to ask us things afterwards. And we've got some questions from last week already.
And there's a quiz. Don't forget the quiz coming up. It's not to be sneezed at this week, but hopefully it's not too taxing either. There's a little clue there about what the quiz is about this week. It's a doozy. You're going to love it.
Right. That sounds intriguing.
Certainly is intriguing. What have you been up to this week?
Oh, just trying to enjoy the sunshine, but I've been working every day. If only I knew in advance that this week was going to be sunny and I could have booked annual leave.
Mr. Burkill.
But two other people in the team booked it first.
Honor and Alex been off all week, so me and you have been in the office all week, haven't we?
Yeah.
Never mind. I'm sure they're enjoying the sunshine.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, sacrificing ourselves for greater good.
Not all heroes wear capes, Aidan. Not all heroes wear capes. But it's been a good week. It's been a busy week, but without being too crazy because the weather's been reasonably calm. Do you know who I got to meet this week? A weather legend or a climate legend.
Oh, I know. Ed.
Yes, Professor Ed Hawkins. I got to meet. We've met him before, haven't we? But did a couple of interviews with him this week. He was in the office, so it was great to meet him. If you don't know, Professor Ed Hawkins came up with the climate stripes. He's the climate stripes guy. Imagine being that. It's from the University of Reading and developed with the University of Reading. They came up with the climate stripes, that iconic image around, clearly showing that the world is warming, or wherever you are, your region, how it's warming as well. So it was great to meet him and have a quick chat with him. I did the 10-day trend. You did the deep dive.
Yeah, which was half an hour of chat about sunny skies.
Got lots of love about the stats. There was a bit about the March stats, wasn't there? So
that's right. We had the sunniest March on record for England. That was confirmed this week. And England and Wales, one of the top, up there, wasn't it? Third or fourth sunniest. Scotland and Northern Ireland haven't done so well for sunshine, but most of the UK has been drier than average away from the far north of Scotland. And of course that weather's continued into April, so I looked in depth at how long this fine weather is expected to last in the deep dive. We'll cover a bit more of that in the next half hour or so. Quite
interesting on the stats about the seasons as well. We picked out how we've had a few seasons now drier than average, and before that that was quite interesting, I thought. Yeah, a few seasons in a row.
We had 5 wet seasons in a row for the UK as a whole, followed by 3 dry seasons in a row. The last 3 seasons have been drier than average for the UK as a whole, but very distinct regional differences as well. Some places have had very wet seasons recently, so it's not that clear cut. But yeah, it seems like the weather has shifted a little bit in the last 6 months to 9 months.
And if you did watch the deep dive, that would help with one of the quiz questions later as well. So there's a clue. So I hope you were paying attention. I hope you remember what you were talking about.
I wasn't paying attention.
Right, quick couple of questions from last week. Denise F2B3E asked, does the lunar calendar dates affect the time of warm weather? Which is an interesting question. Do you want to answer that?
Well, your first reaction might be, why would a full moon or a new moon affect the weather? But actually, there's been some scientific research behind this, and the lunar cycle does affect not only temperatures around the world, but rainfall. A minuscule amount, it has to be said, a minuscule, hardly noticeable. But when there's a full moon or a new moon, just like you get high tides and low tides and so on, when there's a full moon, I can't quite remember the way around it is, but I'm going to recommend a video in a moment so you can get the correct answer. But there is a subtle change in pressure patterns because the moon's doing the same thing with the atmosphere. It's pulling it and compressing it. And that subtle change in pressure patterns means there's this subtle variation in the amount of rainfall that falls across the globe on average when there's a new moon or full moon. And there's also a subtle change in temperature. When there's a full moon, that's reflecting some light from the sun, so it increases the temperature, particularly around the poles, because the poles obviously are so cold already because of a lack of sunshine, so they are soaking up that tiny bit of extra reflection coming from the moon, and they end up a fraction of a degree,
half a degree
warmer on average when there's a full moon compared with a new moon. And that is all set out in a video that I wrote, and we had animated recently, which is part of a series of videos called What If videos that are on our Met Office Learn About Weather channel on YouTube. And this one, I think it was called What If the Moon Disappeared? Because the moon, you may or may not know, it's moving away from the Earth at a rate of about 3 centimetres a year. Tiny amount given the distance of the moon from the Earth, but it is moving away, and that's leading to a slightly longer day length as well over many, many years. So barely noticeable on a human lifetime, but it is happening. What if the moon completely disappeared? How would that affect our weather? That's what we explore in this video.
George is on it. He's put it in the chat already. So the link to that video is in the chat. Well done, George. Thank you for doing that. That is awesome. So yes, it does affect it slightly. It doesn't necessarily spark the onset of warm or cold weather, which was the specific question, but the lunar cycle does, in tiny increments, affect the weather a little bit. But obviously the biggest impact is with the tides.
Yeah, and if the moon disappeared, it would have absolutely catastrophic impacts on the global climate and weather because of the stability that it gives the Earth, particularly with the spin and the rotation of the Earth. So I explore all of that in the video, which you can check out after this live.
Good question, Denise. Quick question from Laurie Driver from last week as well. Could you give an indication of the altitudes for jet streams and clouds? We often refer to them and fronts, but I guess they occupy the same altitude. Does the jet stream affect ground level winds that we experience? Good question, Laurie. The jet stream is generally about 30,000 feet, which is about 9 or 10 kilometers up, or 5.5 to 6.5 miles, depending on how you want to measure it. That's where it is. It doesn't stay still. It's not at a fixed rate. It changes through the year, and it changes day to day, really, where the core, the peak of those jet winds are. There are clouds up there. They're the high clouds, but clouds go all the way up through the atmosphere, so it depends. Cirrus is the highest level cloud, and that's what often you get affected by the jet stream, which is why the cirrus clouds, the really wispy ones at the top, they're moving a lot faster than the ones that are lower down, because that's where the winds are at their strongest, generally speaking. So clouds appear at different levels all the way up through the atmosphere. We get kind of split it into three. There's low, medium, and high level clouds of the 10 main cloud groups that we talk about. Cumulonimbus is the one that goes through all the groups, but generally speaking, it's cumulus, stratus, stratocumulus at low levels, and then the top level you've got cirrus, cirrocumulus, and they're the more wispy ones, and they're moving faster because they're affected by the jet stream. So that's kind of the altitudes we're talking about. Weather fronts also go all the way up through the atmosphere as well. And clouds tend to go with them as well. And does the jet stream affect ground level winds? Well, yes and no, kind of indirectly. It doesn't follow that if the wind's going in one direction high in the sky, it's going to be at the same at low. Absolutely not. But they do influence each other, mainly because the jet stream dictates the kind of pressure pattern that we see at the surface, and it spins up low pressure systems, which gives us stronger winds at the surface. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. You speak for a minute.
So, the clouds go all the way up. You mentioned the height of the jet stream varies. It's lower in the winter, it's higher in the summer, And those high-level clouds, the cirrus, they're at the top of the troposphere. So the troposphere is the slice of atmosphere that is mostly responsible for our weather. You get this temperature inversion at the top of the troposphere, above what we call the tropopause, which is the top of the troposphere, and that is indicative of the stratosphere starting. But the height of the tropopause, the top of the troposphere, that varies significantly from the poles to the equator. It's much higher in the equator because you've got so much more energy from the ground pushing up, and it takes a lot longer for that high energy, that high temperature air to cool off and become the stratosphere. So the top of the troposphere, the top of the weather producing atmosphere layer in the tropics can be up to 60,000 feet. That's how the cumulonimbus clouds you get in the tropics are huge. They go from, a few thousand feet at the base to 60,000 feet above the ground.
They can weigh more than 100 elephants, is that right? Something like that. Something like that. They can weigh more than 100 elephants.
African or Asian?
The bigger eared ones, they're the
African ones.
The African ones, they're the heavier ones because they've got bigger ears.
Yeah.
Gabrielle says hi from Germany, regular viewer. She just wants to thank you for the information about the SSW in the deep dive. So thank you for your comment, Gabrielle. Doing it multilingual now. Met Chasers asks, when will the breeze drop? It feels strange to have such a strong breeze under clear skies. And Met Chasers is in Warrington, so
yeah.
It should be easing a bit as we go through the weekend, but it is noticeable. It's good drying weather, as my mum would say. Put your washing outside. It's good for the climate because you can dry your clothes outside in no time at all because it's sunny and it's breezy. So yes, but it doesn't feel as nice as it looks often at the moment, does it? Because you go outside and think, oh, where's that chilly breeze come from? And it's going to be even more noticeable on the East Coast this weekend.
Paul MC is 237 metres above sea level, and it asks, how does that reduce temperature? Most of the time it reduces temperature, Paul, but not all the time. So most of the time the temperature decreases when you go up through the atmosphere, typically about a degree every 100 to 150 metres. So if you're 237 metres above sea level, it's a degree and a half lower on average compared with the ground, but it's not always the case because sometimes you can get frost hollows. So on a cold night in the winter, there might be a nearby valley that's at sea level where you get a pool of cold air sitting. It's denser, it kind of just sits there in the valley, and you could be above a temperature inversion, so you could be in a spot that's actually warmer. I notice that on my ride in sometimes to work, so you go up and down over the hills of Devon, and on those frosty mornings you go down a hill and it can suddenly feel a lot colder because you're going beneath that inversion into a frost hole. So yeah, most of the time you're probably about a degree and a half colder than sea level, but yeah, it will vary. If it's a cold, frosty night, it'll be different.
A couple of other things noticed this week. 175 years of the Royal Met Sock, so we should wish the Royal Meteorological Society a happy birthday. A couple of days ago, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, 175 years. Happy birthday to them. Another bit of global weather news. The WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, every year they assess the names of the hurricanes and typhoons and cyclones around the world. And the hurricane list, which is fixed, it goes in a 6-year cycle. And every year at the end of that season, they assess on whether they're going to take names out of that year's name. And if it's been a particularly devastating hurricane, then they will take the names out. And they've taken 3 names out of this year's hurricane list and 1 name out of the Pacific Storms list, which was John, I think. So just, I'll get the latest on there, because it was Beryl that was taken out of the hurricanes list, Helene and Milton, because they were particularly powerful. Helene and Milton particularly devastating large parts of the United States. Beryl was one of the earliest Category 5s, if not the earliest Category 5 hurricane on record in the Atlantic Basin, and they have been replaced by Bryony, Holly and Miguel, and John in the Pacific was replaced by Jake. So that's some other weather news from this week.
Universal Cat, if clouds are heavy, how do they float? Great question. And essentially it's because what clouds are made up of, the water droplets are actually tiny and not that heavy, and they're kept in the air by rising air. So these updrafts keep these water droplets in the air. Now, when we talk about cumulonimbus clouds weighing more than 100 elephants. That's if you added up all of those tiny water droplets and weighed the amount of water or ice crystals that are in the top part of the cloud. But that's when they're all combined together in a great big lump. Of course, they do combine together and form raindrops, and then they reach a certain size and they do fall out of the sky. When the updrafts are really strong, then the water droplets, or in some cases the ice crystals, can be kept in the cloud for longer, and so they need to be even larger to fall, so you can have really large raindrops coming out of a very big cloud, or in some cases hail. And hail happens because ice crystals are falling through the cloud, then they get picked up and pushed back upwards by an updraft, and they form another layer of ice on them. And the stronger the updrafts, the more that happens, this cycle of rising hail into the cloud, the more layers they get. And so you know that there's particularly strong updrafts when you get really large hail, because those updrafts have helped to keep that hail in the cloud for a very long time.
And often, if you get hailstones, if it's big enough, if you slice it in half, you can see you can often see little rings where they've been up and through and down through that process a few times of gaining an extra layer, and it's slightly melting and then gaining an extra layer, a bit like a tree ring. You can tell how many times that hailstone's been up and down through a cumulonimbus if you slice it in half and count the rings.
There you go.
Right. Time to look at the weather, because a lot of people are asking questions about the weather and that kind of stuff. But Gordy B, another one of our regular viewers, hi Gordy, asks what changes in the weather could give us some relief from the very high pollen. More on pollen later, but we'll look at the pollen levels. But he also asks, what is the weather looking like around Spain, Portugal and Greece? Are you going to all three, Gordy? That's a big
Lucky
Mediterranean
you.
trip. Yeah.
Well, let's take a look.
Let's take a look at the board.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you have got holiday plans in the Mediterranean, it's not looking as nice as the UK at the moment, and that's actually fairly typical of the spring. This time of year, you are often more likely to have slow-moving high pressure over parts of northern Europe. So this weather at the moment isn't particularly exceptional for the time of year. The reason you are more likely to get this slow-moving high pressure is because you have a weaker jet stream. The reason you have a weaker jet stream is because you have less of a temperature contrast from the North Pole to the subtropics, and it's that temperature contrast through the autumn and the winter that can fuel a very powerful jet stream. The more powerful the jet stream, the straighter it tends to be across the northern hemisphere, and the more vigorous the lows it produces, and so we get unsettled weather. But when it's weak at this time of year, it can be much more undulating, and we can end up with these slow-moving highs. But equally, if we've got high pressure, it often means the lows are getting stuck somewhere else, and that is the case at the moment. It's been the case for much of March. I don't know if you remember, but a couple of weeks ago we were talking about how Gibraltar had experienced its second wettest March on record. We do, of course, have a Met Office in Gibraltar, so we had all that information coming through to us. But the rain is continuing there across Iberia. So, yeah, this area of low pressure that we've seen over the last few days was actually named Storm Nuria by the Spanish Met Service, and that's because of the very strong winds, 70-mile-per-hour winds, in some places 80 mile an hour for the Canary Islands. So, yeah, normally a sunny and benign part of the world. Very windy weather over the last few days. The low is now kind of filling and pushing into Iberia, but it's bringing a weather system with rain and gusty winds. So today is a showery day across much of Spain, Portugal, North Africa, Gibraltar. Into the weekend, that low, by the way, that low's the same low that has brought some rain into southwestern parts of the UK through Thursday night and into Friday. But that low's now moving through. And through the weekend, for Iberia, it is turning drier. We've got this ridge of higher pressure arriving. May not last that long. We've still got some weather fronts out to the west that could start to influence things into next week. But next week is tending to look a little more settled for Spain, Portugal and Gibraltar. Further east, Gordy B asked about Greece, and it has been very, very unsettled there. In fact, there was some absolutely astonishing flash flooding in the island of Paros around the middle of the week, I think. Some really, really lively thunderstorms. Now, the low responsible for that is moving away, or has been moving away, so the showers have been easing. We've got this ridge of high pressure, but if I skip forward you can see another low starting to influence things through the start of next week. So again, not that unusual for the time of year to get very showery weather in the spring. You're guaranteed more or less sunny skies by the time you get to the middle of June. But in the spring, you're not necessarily guaranteed dry, sunny weather in the Mediterranean. One other thing on European weather is the cold air that is at the moment pushing through parts of Scandinavia, northeast Europe, because of the high pressure that's over the UK, and that's going to spread south, and so it's going to end up being quite chilly across, say, parts of Croatia into Greece and Italy into the start of next week. Unusually low temperatures and persisting for some time as well. So yeah, really, we're getting the lion's share of fine weather at the moment in the UK. We're getting the sunny skies, and that is how it's going to continue.
Looks pretty good in the Canaries, or at least it looks better in the Canaries, doesn't it? Because the Canaries had that storm yesterday, so it was really windy. There were amber and I think even a red warning out for the Canaries yesterday, and we did put a tweet out on the Met Office account about that. But if you're going to the Canaries, and a lot of people are, because obviously start the Easter holidays next week for many schools, the Canaries should be seeing the weather settling down a little bit. So yeah, there's that weather front going through Madeira at the weekend. It'll bring some wet and windy weather, but it looks better in the Canaries at least for next week.
Yeah, meanwhile for the UK, bigger picture here, we've got high pressure sticking around for the next 7 days at least. And this is where we are at the time of recording, and we've got high pressure near the Faroes, which of course means we've got an easterly airflow. And so yeah, I know it might be sunny, but it is quite cold, and the wind still, the wind coming from the North Sea, big temperature contrasts across the UK for today because of that easterly wind, so feeling much colder on the northeast coast compared with, say, southern parts of England and South Wales. Now, there's little change over the next few days in the position of that high, but one thing it does do is it drifts further south for a time into the North Sea, and the isobars start to open up on Sunday, so the wind becoming less brisk, and you can see how the isobars open up quite nicely on Monday and into Tuesday. Well, hardly any isobars in the UK by Tuesday. So what does that mean? It means it won't feel quite as cold on that east coast through Monday, Tuesday and into Wednesday. But also with continued sunny skies by day and clear skies by night, it means that we're going to see a return to more widespread overnight frosts, because that wind at the moment is keeping things generally frost-free by night. So a bit of a change into next week, but the general picture remains the same. Even into Wednesday and Thursday, we've got that high, again, slightly changing position, drifting off to the northwest for a time, but the general story is the same. It's sunny skies by day, clear skies by night. The one exception is the east coast, and just to put a bit more detail on that, the east coast. So this is the rest of today. Here's the system that has brought some rain into the southwest during the last 24 hours. Still some cloud remaining for that at the moment across Wales, southwest England into Ireland, and we've got some low cloud edging into North Sea coast, and that's going to be a little bit of a pain, I think, through the next few days for the North Sea coast, whilst the rest of the UK enjoys sunshine. That low cloud, if I could go back a few steps actually to the start of Saturday, you can see it much more widely across the UK, certainly through the Midlands, East Anglia, the southeast, the North Sea coast. So it's going to tend to creep in overnight. A bit of uncertainty. It's quite a fickle, thin area of low clouds, so it's often difficult to predict these things precisely. But it looks like some of these central and eastern parts of the UK are going to wake up to low cloud on Saturday morning, but it doesn't last that long in most places. It quickly lifts, breaks up, and look at that, by 10 a.m, most places back to sunny skies. But the east coast could keep some of the low cloud, and of course that brisk northeast breeze making it feel much, much cooler. Let's put some temperatures on there. This is the temperature at 1 o'clock. Look at that, 8 degrees, northeast England. 9 degrees, you know.
What's it like in Scarborough? Wild Violet is driving down the east coast. Windows down, sunroof open. I'm getting Thelma and Louise vibes, Wild Violet. Hope you have a lovely time. It's going to be sunny, but it will be chilly. But I'm hopeful, like as you can see there, that cloud should clear away from places like Scarborough. It's more likely to stick in eastern Scotland. Yeah. And as we get a bit of a switch of the winds, it could be more prevalent on Sunday, couldn't it?
Orkney, Aberdeenshire, into borders, East Lothian. And, you know, we've got these temperatures East coast there, 7, 8 Celsius with the wind as well. It is going to feel chilly. But you come inland and we're into the mid-teens. By the time we get to the Midlands, perhaps even the high teens in places, could squeeze a 20, 21 Celsius. Not quite as warm in places as today is likely to be, but yeah, amazing temperature and contrasts across the UK. It's a colder day for, well, today's colder as well as tomorrow for the north and west of Scotland compared with some of the temperatures we had earlier in the week, but still very nice. We're out of the wind and in the sunny skies.
I had an interesting question on TikTok actually about that low cloud, because it's called Fret in northeast England. It's called Har in eastern Scotland. Someone asked, can you get it in the east coast of Northern Ireland?
And what would it be called?
You can, but it made me think, because they asked, can you get Har in the eastern side of Northern Ireland? It's like, well, you probably can't get Har because that's the Scottish name for it, but I don't know if it does have a name. You don't get it as much because you can see that there's not as much moisture because it's got to travel, it's only got a shorter sea track, if you see what I mean, with an easterly wind. There's not as much moisture to pick up. You can get it, and it does happen sometimes, doesn't it? But interesting to know, if you're from Northern Ireland, what do you call it if you get that low cloud on the east coast? Because I didn't know. If anyone knows.
If there's no name for it, why not come up with one?
Let's come up with a name for it here and now on the Weather Studio Live.
Competition.
Let's do that. Let's do that. Mrs. Aviator is taking the family to Thorpe Park next Friday. What will the weather be like? Thanks, Neil from Swansea.
When was it, sorry?
Next Friday. So
next
a week today.
Friday. Probably fine. I say probably because we're a week away and that's a long time when it comes to the weather. But the high pressure that I mentioned is likely to still be with us into Friday. And then after that, I'll go into it in a bit more detail in a bit. There is likely to be a change that weekend. So Friday, we're just bordering on that transition to perhaps more unsettled weather. But I think on Friday, you're probably okay in Thorpe Park. It will be a little bit warmer, actually.
Yeah, because the winds will be easing, won't they?
The winds will be easing. And one interesting thing, let's take a look at the temperatures in a bit more detail, because over the next few days, this is the temperature compared with average. So if I just skip forward to today, and you can see the distribution of temperatures today. We've got the highest temperatures compared with average in the south, so 3 to 6 degrees above average, but also parts of Western Scotland, Western England, Wales, Northern Ireland, closer to average or a touch below across parts of Eastern Scotland there, 9 to 11 Celsius. But, put the summary on, what we'll see over the next few days is the temperature's still above average in the southwest on Saturday, a little less so on Sunday. The temperatures are slowly dropping over the next few days. We've got cooler air arriving from the east. Still above average for parts of Scotland, Northern England, Wales, predominantly over the mountains actually. That's picking out where the highest temperatures compared with average are likely to be. And then into Tuesday, again, western areas. But what happens after that is, what's the best way of showing this? Let's bring up a graph like this. Now, Aberdeen and Edinburgh are two places that are likely to be, well, fairly limited as far as temperatures are concerned.
Cold is the word you're looking for.
There we go. This is the maximum temperature for Aberdeen on Saturday, 8 degrees, right?
With a wind.
With a wind. By Thursday, the temperatures start to jump up to 14. Likewise for Edinburgh, 17 by Thursday. So if you're sick of that cold wind on the East Coast, I'm afraid you've got a few more days of it. But next Thursday, Friday, what happens is the high pressure that I mentioned that's pushing out to the northwest middle of next week, it tends to drift south then, which means more of a westerly influence, which means next Thursday, Friday, places like eastern Scotland, northeast England in particular, will be much warmer as a result. Thorpe Park, probably going to be sunny spells and feeling a little warmer as well.
Teens probably, yeah. Good stuff. Keep your questions coming in. We will do the quiz shortly because we're already half an hour in. We're having so much fun this week. But a quick question from Chris, which I think is particularly relevant this week. Chris says, is there ever a chance we'll get temperatures of 40 Celsius again, or was that just a one-off? Now, there's an interesting paper that you've seen this week that you're going to make making a video about on that. I'm not sure how much we can say about it.
Can't say anything about it.
Can't say anything about it. But it's relevant. All we can say to Chris is watch this space then, because there will be a video about it. But I just wanted to reference that because, yeah, it's an interesting area of ongoing scientific research. So watch this space. Make sure you're following us. Hit subscribe, as well as the thumbs up. If you hit subscribe, then there will be a video about that probably coming out in the summertime at some point. But
I think one interesting thing about this that I wanted to mention actually is that in our current climate that has been, the global average has warmed by more than 1 degree Celsius. It's warmed so rapidly that there are extremes that are possible in the current climate that we don't know about because we haven't had a long enough record to look at those extremes. And climate models are good at predicting the average increase of global temperature. They're very good at that. They've been doing it successfully for several decades. But what they're not so good at is capturing those extremes that have never happened before in this kind of climate. What are the chances of 40 Celsius happening? What would be the theoretical maximum temperature that we could experience in the UK? We haven't got a long enough record in the current climate to understand that. And so, there's some interesting research ongoing, not just about 40 degrees, but other kinds of extremes that might be possible in the current
And of course,
climate.
it's the extremes that really impact people. If you tell people it's just going to get a degree warmer in the UK, everyone's kind of happy about that because they think it's too cold. But it's the extremes. That's what really affects people. That's the most dangerous thing about climate change, the fact that we're pushing those extremes. So that's quite a frustrating part of the fact that, as you say, the models are very good at predicting the average and the increase and that kind of stuff. But it's the extremes that have the biggest impact, and that's what people remember. And that's why we need to act, because those extremes are becoming so much more extreme. Really interesting stuff. Right, I think it probably is time for the quiz, the time we've all been waiting for. It's quiz time. Play the music, Rich. Right, I said at the start that it's not to be sneezed at. We've got a new video
that rhinoviruses.
We've got a new video. No, we've got a new video that we published out last week on pollen. We'll have a sneak peek of that. Honor made that a couple of weeks ago, so that was a new video this week. We have seen an increase in pollen levels this week. I suffer from tree pollen. You're not a hay fever sufferer, are you?
No, I am. Grass pollen.
Grass pollen.
Yeah, that's my thing.
So the thumbnail for this week's live, we should clarify that you were pretending to rub your eyes, just in case anyone thought that was genuine.
In sympathy
with my sneezing. I have been sneezing a lot this week because I do suffer from tree pollen. If you've watched Honor's video already, you will know most of the answers to this week's quiz. You're a bit of a pollen expert because you've done videos on it before, so I'm guessing you'll do quite well at this quiz. But yeah, 4 questions on pollen, 1 question on tax, because I got bored of pollen questions, and it's the end of the tax year.
You're filling in your tax return.
I wasn't filling in my tax return. It's a bit late for that. They've got to be done by January. But I thought it was, I was inspired by Martin Lewis and thought it's the end of the tax year. So 1 question loosely related to tax. I also feel a bit sorry for HMRC. I think they've got a content team.
To do a Friday Live with questions about tax.
They'd want to do one, right? If they'd be sitting around saying, the weather guys, they get to do a live on YouTube, their quiz, and I just felt a bit sorry for them. So I thought, this is what it could look like. If you had imagine that, an HMRC.
I'd watch.
Would you though? Right, anyway, I digress. Question 1, all about pollen. What are the peak temperatures for tree pollen production? What is the range of temperatures for peak tree pollen production? A, it's multi-choice. A, 11 to 13 Celsius. B, 13 to 15 Celsius. C, 15 to 17. D, 17 to 19. So what are the peak temperatures for tree pollen production? A, 11 to 13. B, 13 to 15. C, 15 to 17. D, 17 to 19. Aidan's put his answers to me on a Teams chat. Put your answers in the chat or answer the poll, however you want to do it, and then let us know at the end how well you have done. As I say, if you've watched Honor's video, you'll know all about it, and we'll have more on that in a second. Right, so you've answered that one. Good work. Question 2, bit trickier. What antibody does pollen trigger in the human Antibody. What is the name of the antibody that makes you sneeze, that creates the mucus, that causes all the problems once pollen gets up your nose? Whoa.
I put it in.
You put it in already. It's not one of the answers.
It's not one of the answers.
So you might want to take that.
Okay.
What is the name of the antibody? Is it A, immunoglobulin E? Okay. Is it B, exochromal H? Is it C, I know a little German, K? Or is it D, hypertaxograph F? Complicated one.
Is that the tax question?
Well, I thought I'd mix it up a little bit. So, is it A, immunoglobulin E, B, exochromal H, C, I know a little German, K, or D, hypertaxograph F? Hey, you learned something, right? Everyone
Which ones were
something.
made up?
If you'd watch, yeah, a little reference there to Val Kilmer, who passed away this week. So if you know, you know, all right? But yes, let me know your answers to that. If you've watched Honor's video, you'd know that one. Have you answered?
I have, yeah.
Right. Keep your answers coming. This one's a little easier. You'll know this one. I know you know this one. Question 3: at what threshold temperature does grass pollen start to drop? So, temperatures rise, grass pollen doesn't always rise. There's a threshold at which grass pollen actually drops off. What is that air temperature? A, 24, B, 26, C, 28, or D, 30? 24, 26, 28, or 30. What threshold temperature does grass pollen actually start to drop off? So when it gets really hot, you can see it's often good news for hay fever sufferers in those summer months. I'm not going to go through any comments because we're already over time. So I'll just get on with question 4. What is the name of the machine used to make the pollen count?
Oh, I know that. Hang on. I'll write my answer in
before reading the options. So what is the name of the machine used to make the pollen count? Is it Burkhardt, A, Burkhardt, B, Bullard, C, Bonard, or D, Dullard? Burkhardt, Bullard, Bonard, Dullard. What is the name of the machine? So they actually put a little bit of sticky tape out, don't they? And then that collects the pollen. They go and take the bit of sticky tape off and actually literally count the number of bits of pollen.
Not the Burkill trap, then?
Not the Burkill trap, no. It's Burkhardt, Bullard, Bonard, Dullard. One of those answers. Please let us know in the chat. Let's see what people are guessing. Philip Murphy. It's not D, I know that. Yeah, well, there's quite a few you can rule out with this quiz. I like to keep it interesting, so people have got a good guess, a good chance of guessing at least, even if they don't know. But yeah, thanks for all your answers. Gordy B. Oh yeah, I think he's got a few right already. It's not C, Gabrielle saying. Yeah, keep your answers coming. Last question.
Brilliant.
So if that's the end of the pollen question.
The tax question.
This is the tax question,
It's the one I've been waiting for.
The one you've been waiting for. Right, it's also related to the deep dive. The percentage of, so March was a dry month, right? The percentage rainfall we received compared to the average March.
Yeah.
Which tax band is that closest to? So the percentage of the March 2025 rainfall compared to average, which tax band is it closest to? Is it A, the basic rate of income tax? Is it B, the higher rate of income tax? Is it C, the additional rate of income tax? Or D, the super tax rate of income tax?
Well, I've not heard of two of those, so
Wow.
not been paid enough.
No, obviously. So is it A? So you need to know. And there's two things you need to know here: what the percentage of the rainfall was, and what those tax bands are. Where's Martin Lewis when you need him? Hey, was it A, the basic rate of income tax? B, the higher rate of income tax? C, the additional rate of income tax? Or D, the super tax rate of income tax? Have you filled in all your answers?
Yeah. Do you think Martin Lewis would be sharing his tips on pollen?
I think he probably will.
Yeah.
I bet he's got some. I bet there is a good. He will tell you to buy unbranded antihistamine tablets. That is a top tip. There's a money saving.
Unbranded any medicine,
Unbranded.
they all have the same ingredients.
It's all the same stuff. It's all the same stuff.
Yeah. Once the patent runs out,
Yeah.
anyone can make certain medicines, and they all have the same active ingredients. So yeah.
There you go. Top money saving advice as well as weather advice. This is brilliant. Right, that is the end of the quiz. We've got all your answers in. Let's do the answers. Question 1. Peak temperatures for tree pollen production. The answer was B, 13 to 15. Well done, 13 to 15 Celsius. That's why tree pollen peaks earlier. That's why we're getting a lot of birch pollen around at the moment. That's what I suffer from. It's very high across the southwest. It's very high across actually large parts of England and Wales at the moment, high or very high. So yeah, it's that 13 to 15 Celsius window. That's where birch pollen peaks. Other trees are a little bit later in the season generally, but birch is one of the earliest. Ash is also quite potent at the moment in terms of its pollen levels. You can get pollen alerts if you do suffer from hay fever on your Met Office app. So if you haven't set that up on your Met Office free app. What antibody does pollen trigger? Is it A, immunoglobulin E, B, all the others, right? You answered A, which is correct. Well done.
Sounded like the one that wasn't made up.
I thought exochromal H was quite a good one.
Also, it had immuno in the name. It's to do with the immune system, isn't it? The immune
Immunoglobulin E. So there you go. There's a fun fact to take to the pub with you tonight. That's the antibody that pollen triggers in the body. I mean, you did say histamine at first, but I'll let you off. C was the reference to Val Kilmer, R.I.P. But anyway, we'll move on. At what threshold temperature does grass pollen start to drop? And the answer to that is
28.
28. You knew that before. I knew you knew that. 28 degrees Celsius. So when it gets above 28 Celsius, actually, grass pollen levels start to drop. What is the name of the machine used to make the pollen count? Burkard, Bullard, Bonard, or Dullard? And the answer is? Burkard trap. That is A, the answer A. You have got 4 out of 5 so far.
Just the tax.
Just the tax. What does the tax man say? What is the percentage of... So first of all, what's the percentage rainfall that we received in March when compared to average?
It was 40-something, wasn't it? 46, 47?
43.
43.
43%. Okay. This is quite a tricky question because you had to know that. So we received in March 43% of the average across the UK as a whole. Is that closest to the basic rate of income tax? What's that?
No, it's not that.
Yeah, but what is the basic rate of income tax?
20.
20%, yeah.
20.
The higher rate of income tax, which is 40.
40, yeah.
40%. The additional rate of income tax, which is 45%, or D, the super tax rate of income tax, which doesn't exist. I made that up because that's kind of a theoretical tax, so 50%. And the answer is actually C, so you got that one wrong.
Oh.
Because it's closest, ever so slightly, to that additional rate. It was only within 1%. There you go. Fun. Who said you can't have fun with tax, right?
So I said before this.
C.
Was I right?
Well, you're right. So there you go. Let us know how you did in the quiz. While you are filling in that in the chat, we will watch a little video clip from Honor's pollen video about some top tips. So if you are suffering from hay fever or you're building up to the grass pollen season, here's some top tips from Honor about how to handle pollen.
It's difficult to completely avoid pollen, but following our pollen forecast if you do suffer from hay fever can help you plan ahead and take action to prevent or limit the effects of pollen. You can even receive alerts from our app when pollen levels are high. Other things that could help include reducing your time outside when there are high pollen levels, especially if someone is outside cutting the grass, showering and changing clothes when you come indoors after being outside, keeping windows closed, and wearing wraparound sunglasses to stop pollen getting into your eyes. Stay up to date by subscribing to the Met Office YouTube channel and checking our website for the latest updates.
Excellent stuff. You can watch that whole video on our YouTube channel, and we'll pop that in the chat as well. How did you do in the quiz? Chris got 4 out of 5, so the same as Aidan. Oliver Carmona also got 4 out of 5. Jay's Transport 3 out of 5. Gordy B did better than most weeks. Donald Barron got 3 out of 5. Ian Sims 2 out of 5. Dean Addison 4 out of 5. He also got the tax question wrong. Paul Skilling, at least he got 1, which is more than Rusty Warrior, who didn't get very many, put it that way. Yeah, you can watch that whole video from Honor on there. But what are the latest hot off the press pollen stats, Aidan? Where are we?
So this is today, and we've got pollen levels of very high or high across much of England, Wales. If I go further north here, they become moderate. And yeah, that's to do with the later arrival of the pollen across northern parts of the UK, but also to do with the temperature. Obviously, we've got the optimum temperatures, as Alex was saying in his quiz, mid-teens across southern parts of the UK. Now, over the next few days, they do drop a little as temperatures begin to fall, but as you can see, the winds fall light on Monday into Tuesday. Got these very high levels returning, less so across eastern northern parts, so some relief, particularly if on that North Sea coast it's going to be too cold for pollen. So that's one consolation. If you don't like the cold but you suffer from tree pollen allergies, it is going to be better towards
and
these.
UV, can you put the UV up?
Oh,
because some people are asking about the UV. That's something you really need to be aware of this weekend, because it's UV, there's a video all about UV as well, and why it's not linked to temperature. It doesn't matter what the temperature is, so even if it's cold on the east coast, the UV levels will be the same as they will be when in the warmer west. But yeah, UV levels will be getting higher this weekend.
4 there for northeast England, 4 for South Wales. A big temperature difference, same amount of sunshine for most places. We've got the further north you are, obviously the weaker it becomes, but it's moderate levels across most of the UK, which can still do some damage.
Yeah.
In April, the sun is about the same strength as it is in the first 10 days of September, but in September we feel the warmth much more because everything's warmed up by then. And over the next few days you can see those levels remain moderate. In fact, they go up there Monday up to moderate in Lerwick. So yeah, make sure you cover up, because we're all pretty pale after the winter, so our skin could do with some protection.
Yes, absolutely. So do put the sunscreen on this weekend. And that video about UV is also available on our YouTube channel as well, so you can find out a bit more about how the UV levels vary through the year. Basically, it peaks around the summer solstice, the 21st of June, and then starts to drop off again. So it's definitely on the up as we go through this weekend. One other thing to mention: WhatsApp. We've got loads of followers on WhatsApp, haven't we? It's probably our biggest growing channel.
Fastest growing, 160,000. So if you're not one of those 160,000. Do join us on WhatsApp, because you get the alerts as soon as something like this comes out, or some interesting weather news. You can be across it, and you can share it with your friends and family on your own WhatsApp groups. That's the beauty of our WhatsApp channel, isn't it?
Yeah. Lots of good stuff on there, as there is on our YouTube channel as well. So do hit subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, do hit subscribe. Give us the thumbs up. It really does make a big difference. And spread the love. Let everyone know that we're on here, and we're doing this every week, every Friday. It's been us for 3 weeks, isn't it? Should we have a week off next week? I mean, me and you not doing it next week?
2 weeks off.
I think let's have 2 weeks off. It'll be Mr. Burkhill and the lovely Honor Criswick next week doing your Weather Studio Live. So keep your questions coming in, because we will read them. We'll go through them. We'll try and answer as many of them as we can. And even if you're not watching this live, as I say, keep your comments, keep your questions coming, because we do go through them. We'll try and answer them as best we can. They'll be doing the 10-day trend and the deep dive and stuff like that next week. So another reason to subscribe, particularly if you're on Easter holidays, or you're looking at the Easter weekend as well, because that'll come out in the 10-day trend next week. We're looking at the Easter weekend, or the start of it, and we'll be getting an idea of what flavour weather we could have for the Easter bunny. But
Brilliant.
That's about it, is it?
Yeah.
That's about it. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye.